Jane Velez Mitchell for Unchained TV. We are covering a breaking news story. A woman named Tracy Murphy, who owns a sanctuary, a farmed animal sanctuary in upstate New York, took in two cows that she said just wandered onto her property. She was ultimately arrested, charged with felony grand larceny. That has recently been reduced to petty larceny. I'll show you her mugshot right here. This is Tracy Murphy, and she is still facing trial on petty larceny. There was supposed to be a hearing, but it was postponed. So, some supporters in that area of New York actually have held a protest. We're going to go straight out to, let's go straight out to Gabby Richards. Gabby, you're on live. Tell us what's going on there and where are you?
Yes, so we are at the Niagara County Clerk's building. We are outside of the building where the DA has his office, and we are here standing up for Tracy. We have many of her supporters here echoing the fact that compassion is not a crime. She did everything that any kind-hearted person would do when animals wander onto their property, and we're here to speak for her.
Yeah, and why is it silent?
Yes, it is silent because Tracy has been gagged. There is a gag order with Tracy Murphy. She is unable to speak up for herself and defend herself on social media. She is an animal sanctuary who is not allowed to fundraise for herself. And these are all sanctions that have been placed on her by the judge.
Now, can you just take us through these protests? Show us the protests. We're going to put you on silent. Let's see here. Let's just take a look at what's going on. This is live, and we are, I believe, the only news organization live right now outside the DA's office. You can see that they're gagged. This is symbolic of Tracy Murphy being gagged and a gag order being leveled on her, which she's saying is preventing her from raising any funds to take care of the animals she does have. So this is what, let me ask you one other thing. Gabby, what is the mood in the community? Because we know she's faced a lot of protests against her.
Yes, she has. It's difficult for her inside of the Newfane community. There is still a lot of hostility towards her, a lot of social media negativity still coming her way, but she has a lot of support. The vegan community, animal rights community, animal lovers community, you know, we're here and we're happy to speak up for her, but that is not to say that she is not dealing with a lot of negativity coming her way still.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to go back to you in 1 second. I want to go to our incredible expert panel, but first I want to play a local news report that explains the situation. I think this was the most fair news report that I saw on the story. Let's play that and then we'll discuss.
These posted signs dot several neighborhoods in Newfane calling for the return of cows that are now living here at Asha's Farm Sanctuary, where protesters are also calling for their return to their original owner.
People are protesting against Asha's Farm Sanctuary, and they're trying to say that we are, cow rustlers. And that means stealing cows, and that is not true. They wandered on to my property.
Tracy Murphy is the president of Asha's Farm Sanctuary. She's been running this safe haven for farm animals for a decade. She tells me these two cows, which she names Little Willow and Ishmael, showed up to her sanctuary around July 16th. She says she called SPCA the same day she found them wandering around.
The alleged owner called me about a week later after the report with the SPCA, and I talked with the owner.
That owner is Scott Gregson. He owns a beef cattle farm not too far from the sanctuary. He tells me he went to feed his cattle one day when he noticed they were gone.
We looked for them and we were advised on the following Friday by an SPCA investigator that they were located in an animal sanctuary. I do know where they're at, but I can't comment on the case any further.
Gregson has been raising beef cattle for almost a decade. He says his children are wondering when the cattle will come back home.
We raise them to butcher. However, during the process, they're here for 2 years. So you do get attached to them. I know for some people it may seem funny, but you know, they come up to us, we give them noogies, we pet them.
As for Murphy, she says she hopes she can come to an agreement with the owner.
We're willing to waive any boarding, and we're willing to give them top dollar, for these animals.
And so that set up the case, but she was later arrested and booked, originally charged with grand larceny. That was reduced to petty larceny. There was supposed to be a hearing today, but it got postponed. Instead, there's a demonstration, as you can see, outside of the DA's office with supporters of Tracy Murphy saying compassion is not a crime. I mean, that article, that news report laid it out pretty well. I want to go to Nathan Semmel, who is a former Manhattan assistant district attorney and a prominent defense attorney in New York. You are a lawyer in New York. What do you make of this case? What is the essential dispute here?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that the activists are at the DA's office because, as a former prosecutor and a defense attorney, this is such a horrible use of prosecutorial discretion. I mean, this is really a situation where you have a woman with no criminal record who didn't even affirmatively go onto somebody else's property to take these animals. They wandered onto her property and she cared for them. She showed them compassion. To try to brand her a criminal, to try to get a conviction, just to me is just such an abuse of discretion. And one thing that's not mentioned in that story that I think is very important here, and I'm sure is a big factor in the case, is Mr. Gregson is actually a law enforcement officer. This is a civil case, Jane. I mean, this is a property dispute, right? I mean, I hate to use the term property when we're talking about animals, but the reality is, I think it's fair to say, but for Mr. Gregson being law enforcement, this is not a case the prosecutors would ever bring.
Interesting. I want to go back out to the scene, and I want to talk to Joe Allman, who is also there. Joe, what is your sense of the mood there today? A hearing was postponed. Now there's a march happening.
Absolutely, Trace. Absolutely, Joe. So what's happening now is we're actually marching towards the Niagara County District Attorney's Office, which again is the venue for the newly appointed venue for the prosecution against Tracy. The mood here is very somber, although it's one of the first beautiful days here in upstate New York. The gravity of the situation is not falling off of anyone here. When Tracy found those 2 cows wandering on her property, she had no idea that by protecting and nurturing them, she'd wind up at the center of this heated and historic controversy.
Thank you, Joe. Now we've got incredible panelists here. I want to go straight out to Renee King-Sonnen, and she has a unique perspective because she is a former cattle rancher's wife who turned her husband's cattle sanctuary in Texas into a vegan farmed animal sanctuary. Renee, you were a cattle rancher. Now you are a vegan sanctuary owner. What's your take on this case?
Well, Jane, thank you for having me. I've been following this case since the very beginning. I've been bombarded with information about this, and I've done a lot of writing and journaling on it myself because it has triggered an immense amount of emotion for me. As a former cattle rancher turned vegan, I have the opportunity to see things from both sides. But as a vegan, I am so immersed in sadness around the fact that I know exactly how Tracy feels. I actually spoke to Tracy about this because I do understand her perspective. From a cattle rancher perspective, this has happened to us. We had a cow named Magic wander onto a cattle rancher's property, 600 acres, when we were in Angleton. And had they not given the cow back to us, and there was no proof that it was ours. There was no, we didn't have a tag on her or a chip or anything. But he did send a photo of her to us, and we said, yes, that's our cow Magic. And they did help us get her back, to our property, which we were so grateful for, because he was about to round up all of his cows, and there was a lot of them going to the sale barn that week. So we were very fortunate. So, I'm grateful that we didn't get into a dispute, and that he didn't keep Magic. I would have been heartbroken. But at the same time, there's two different languages, here. Cattle ranchers see things from an entirely different point of view, because they're considered property. They are considered property by law. And so because of that, cattle ranchers are able to use and abuse the law. And
yeah, I was very Renee, that
yes.
the difference with your case is you weren't going to take them back to slaughter them. Now, right on camera, Gregson said they are raised to be butchered. So that is the difference. And right on camera, Tracy Murphy said she was willing to pay whatever price that would be paid to the person or the company that would butcher the animals. So
they were using them, and they were using the cattle ranchers were using them as leverage, because they know that they have the law on their side. It's really unfortunate, because what I love about this case and other cases like this with Wayne Shung and others, Anita Krines, is that it's bringing into the forefront the necessity for animals to be protected by law. Farm animals particularly need to be protected by law. The other case that happened with us here in Angleton is we had a cow wander up here that wasn't ours, that belonged to a cattle rancher. And, this has happened. And, what we do is we don't just keep the cow, because we as former cattle ranchers, and my husband particularly, he's helped me with this, because he was the cattle rancher, was traditionally steeped in this culture. So he, whenever cattle would wander up on our property, I'd say, well, I don't want to tell anybody. And he'd say, Renee, if we want to have any type of decent communication or relationships with the folks around us, we got to at least let people know that these cows have wandered up on our property. So, we did that. And we've had, cattle ranchers come over here, get their cows, they wandered on our property. It happens a lot. And then in one instance, we had a baby. His name is Jetto.
I just want to jump in for a second, because we want to get to all of our panelists. You've brought in some incredible points here. Is that the bottom line, Ellen Dent, is that the law considers animals, sentient beings like these two cows, to be property. In fact, in two prior cases, these other animals, in cases that have some commonalities, the prosecution said, well, what if you took a dented can? And another prosecutor said, what if you walked out with a car? What are your thoughts, Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network?
Well, I just don't think it's fair. It just doesn't sound fair to me. And I'm sure Nathan can weigh in on this, that, the judge is basically gagging this side, the owner, quote unquote, Mr. Gregson is, I don't think that she's being treated fairly.
Okay.
By putting the gag order on them. And these animals aren't property. They aren't objects, and you can't compare them to objects. To us, they're not property. So I find it to be like so incredibly disheartening that this is happening when she's trying to save their lives.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. You don't consider them property, but the law at this moment in time considers them property. But there are also, I guess I want to boil it down to, I read an article that said this sets a dangerous precedent. And if I had to boil down why, the farming community is so upset, and they've actually protested against her. You're looking at this protest. These are the supporters of Tracy Murphy, but they are upset that Tracy Murphy has been gagged while the other side has not been gagged. And I want Nathan Semmel, as a former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, to clarify that. What is that situation?
Regarding the gag order?
Yes.
Well, it's really unusual, and it's very, very rare, especially, I mean, this is a high profile case, I'm sure, in that community. But we are talking about a person's First Amendment rights. And that really, unless there is absolute proof that Tracy, by speaking publicly on her social media or otherwise, would make it impossible to find a fair jury, I just can't imagine why a gag order would be necessary. I think everybody in this community is aware of the case. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing the quote unquote victim, Mr. Gregson, allowed to speak freely. So there's sort of an inherent unfairness that's going on here that is very surprising to me. I mean, it sets up an interesting appellate issue, which hopefully we don't ever get to. But I can't really think of many examples, if any, where just the accused is gagged, the lawyers aren't gagged, the prosecutors aren't gagged, and the complainant is not gagged. It just seems very unfair to me and unusual.
Again, if you're just joining us, we are live. We've got two different people out there playing reporter for us, bringing us this protest. Gabby, tell us where it has moved to, if you could describe what's happening now, because it's very windy, so you're getting a little crackle, but tell us what's happening there.
Yes, so we started in the back of the parking lot by one of the side streets, but we have now moved to the front entrance of the building. So we are now in the front of the building.
Are any people from the DA's office or anybody else seeing this? Is there local news media covering this?
Yes, we do have local news media here. He is covering it for us. I think it's Channel 4. Yep, Channel 4 is here. But nobody from the building has come out, other than community members who are coming in to do legal work, but no one who works in the building.
And so, how this is very interesting. There are, I think, well, in most markets, I worked in small TV markets. There's usually 3 news outlets at least, but you're seeing just one of them there. But kudos to the one that is there. And there's not a lot of traffic. That's interesting. That's why it's so important, I must say, that Unchained TV is there. And we're bringing you this because if a tree falls and no one hears it, does it make a sound? And that's why we have launched Unchained TV, Animal Rights Media, because there are situations like this all the time where advertiser-based media, despite the fact that we saw a very fair report, I thought, which I played recently, just doesn't cover it. Or when they do cover it, they cover it in a biased fashion. So I think it's very important that we're there, and it's very important that you, Gabby, and Joseph Allman are showing what's going on. And he has an actual, a very good angle right here. So you're saying that very few people, do you think the DA has to know this is going on, Gabby?
Yes, it's impossible for him to not see 22 of us standing out here, walking through the parking lot. We obviously met here a little bit beforehand. Also, there's like, I don't know, maybe 40 windows just on this side. They must know we're here.
All right. And I know Jenny McQueen is there. So if you can get into a place that's protected from the wind, please bring us Jenny McQueen, who's a noted activist from Toronto, Canada, who has shown up there. Okay, great. We've got Jenny McQueen, but just get away from the wind. Go so where you're not in the windy area, because we're getting a lot of wind. Okay, so you're looking live. This is live coverage of a silent protest outside. Now, somebody said they need bullhorns and sidewalk chalk, but the truth is the reason they're doing it this way is because it's symbolic to show that Tracy Murphy, who wanted to keep 2 cows who had wandered onto her farm sanctuary, offering to pay top dollar whatever the person who would butcher the animals would pay. Instead, she was arrested, and this is her mugshot. So I want to go back to Nathan Semmel, and I want to talk a little bit about the gag order basically preventing her, according to her supporters, from even raising funds to keep her sanctuary open. And yet you're saying the other side can talk all they want. And indeed, they've had protests. So maybe before we go to you, I want to show a protest that happened last year. This was across the street from Asha's sanctuary. And this is a protest held by people in the community who were upset that Tracy Murphy did not immediately hand over the cows to the trooper, the New York State trooper, who said the cows were his.
I wish we didn't have this nonsense to deal with. Yep. He needs a
Right.
Very violent people. The state police have this.
This man is the most violent. If there's somebody walking along the road, I would just ignore them as much as possible, as long as they're not like approaching us.
It's not his ball court right now.
Yeah, I will.
So it's
I think they're just
New
crossing.
York State Police that has this investigation. So be patient. We hope that that justice will be served.
So that was a protest against Tracy Murphy earlier, this past summer. And now we've got a protest in favor of Tracy Murphy. This is clearly a community divided over this issue. We want to go back out to the scene and talk to Jenny McQueen. Jenny is a noted activist based out of Toronto. Jenny, why are you there? Why is this important?
Well, I think it's horrendous, the treatment that Tracy has been given. I've volunteered at Asha's. I've spent many hours there, and she is the sweetest kind soul. She's selfless. She works hard for the animals, and all she was doing was trying to give the animals refuge when they wandered onto her property.
Now, what do you make of that protest? We just played a protest by the other side. They're very angry, and I read an article, I think, that summarizes it. It was a foreign publication that said this sets a dangerous precedent. In other words, I think there's a fear among the farming community that, well, even if she paid top dollar for the animals, she kept them, that would somehow open a Pandora's box for them, and that animals wouldn't be considered mere property going forward.
Absolutely. Animals have no protection in the law. The fact that they're deemed property is absolutely outrageous. And especially when you consider that in some countries, rivers are now being given personhood and animals are not.
And indeed, corporations in our country have an element of personhood. Thank you for that. We'll come back to you in a second. So I want to mention a couple of things. I'm holding in my hand a letter that somebody who lives in the area wrote to the FBI, because this gentleman who I spoke to in person said that somebody told him that Tracy Murphy was getting death threats. And I looked at one of the anonymous, and we have no clue who this person is who is purportedly sending death threats, or persons, but it's too obscene to read. But the bottom line is that it essentially said, we're going to hang you from a tree. You're going to give us those bleeping cows, or we're going to kick in your bleeping door at 2 a.m. and take them back and hanging your dumb ass in a bleeping tree. And he said, this is the letter he wrote to the FBI because he was concerned. And he said he got a call from the FBI. He doesn't know anything about follow-ups. But what do you make of that, Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network?
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, look at where she's living. They're going to come out with pitchforks and come after her like some sort of lynch mob. Like, it's absolutely insane that she's having to go through this, that she's having to deal with these threats of violence. I mean, I hate to say it, but I wish they could move her case out of the area. Like, I don't know how inconvenient that would be for her, but it sounds like the judge is against her. It sounds like the whole community is against her there. I hate to see this, going down in this area where it's obviously controlled by, the law enforcement farmers.
Yeah, and Nathan Semmel, as a former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney who is now a prominent defense attorney in Manhattan, in New York State, could they get a change of venue? Could they get
There's actually a pending motion right now, Jane, and it's in part because of that death threat that you just read, and it's in part because of the protests that you're seeing, that this is a small community and there's essentially nobody who isn't impacted by this case. So choosing a jury, a fair and impartial jury, is virtually impossible. I just want to say one thing that that is remarkable to me, and I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to recognize it. But when listening to that clip that you played of the protest and the person on the horn saying, on the loudspeaker saying that these are violent people, and right after that you're reading a death threat towards Tracy, is just really remarkable. I mean, Tracy is somebody whose entire livelihood is based upon showing compassion for animals and helping animals, whereas the prosecutors in this case are prosecuting and essentially defending a person whose livelihood is killing animals. So, I think things are once again a little upside down, and hopefully the jury system will rectify this. And I think that's the fear. That's the fear of the community, because another acquittal for animal rights sends another message to animal agriculture, and that hits them in the wallet.
And what you're referring to is the fact that there have been two recent cases. Wayne Shung, who is the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, which is an animal rights group which believes in the concept of open rescue, namely that if there's an animal suffering, you have not just a moral obligation, but they're trying to establish a legal right to take that animal out. Just like if there was a dog trapped in a hot car, you could break that window and nobody would castigate you for it because the animal would be dying had you not broken the window. And they're applying that to farm animals with a great success in the last two cases in which Wayne Shung was charged in Utah. And then more recently, former Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul, you're looking at her right there with her hair in a bun, and next to her, Alicia Santorio, they were charged for a quote unquote open rescue of two chickens here in California, and they were acquitted. Both people were acquitted by a jury. And then in the previous case, Wayne Shung was acquitted. So those are two victories back to back. And it is obviously Direct Action Everywhere and Wayne Shung, who is the defense attorney for Tracy Murphy in this case, they're hoping it sets a precedent. So this is a rising movement. And, Renee Kingston and I was wondering, again, as a former cattle rancher turned vegan sanctuary owner, what do you think of these court cases in the attempt to establish the right to rescue?
Oh, thank you. It's absolutely 100% necessary. And that is what's so beautiful about this case and others like it, is that it puts a spotlight on the right to rescue, the right for us to have compassion for these animals, to not put them in horrible situations where they're going to be slaughtered and see their friends be slaughtered. I mean, cows can smell like 6 times more than humans. They can smell everything like 6 miles from them. Imagine them being in slaughterhouses and smelling the death. I mean, why would we want to put these animals in such egregious circumstances? It's not in any way, some sort of God thing. It's not normal. It is all about, greed and power. It's going to take court cases like this to shine a spotlight. And I know it's difficult. I know how hard it is for these activists. I've been through a lot of hardship myself, having a farm sanctuary. I believe animal agriculture uses vegans a lot as a front to try to break us apart, to separate us. So it's important that we all come together. I want to see hundreds more people out in front of courts like this supporting Asha. Asha deserves the support. Yes, cattle ranchers, don't understand, but it's time for them to. I'm telling you, if you're a cattle rancher out there listening, please, contact us. We have friends that are cattle ranchers. Cattle ranchers donate to Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. Why? Because we are establishing a precedent. We are establishing a new way to look at these animals. And when farmers and ranchers see or hear our story, there is a connection. They are connecting. And that's one of the real important things to remember here is that connecting to these ranchers is also vitally important because they don't understand us.
I want to jump in and take off from what you're saying because you're raising a very important point. Is there any way for there to be a dialogue here? Is there any way, Joe? I want to go out to you, Joe Allman. You're there at the scene. You live in the area. Do you think it's possible in any way, shape, or form for there to be a dialogue? And let's show some of the protesters while you're talking. Great, go ahead.
Absolutely, Jane. So at this time, the common ground that I found with Tracy is when I saw on her interview that she simply said that those cows want to live. And Tracy offering a lifetime of care free from harm, I think is something that anyone can get behind. Now, when I interviewed some of those individuals that were in opposition to Tracy on the day of that aforementioned protest, one of them did say that animals do not have rights, and without naming any names, that is that is some of the sentiments. And of course, here we are saying that animals should not be killed unnecessarily. So although there is some disconnect when it comes to that narrative, the common ground of compassion towards animals, I think, is something that we can find with everyone.
There are so many interesting aspects to this case. One of the ones is, how did the animals end up there? And some people have even insinuated it was questioned in a news report. Well, basically implying that she was a cattle rancher, that she went over there to her neighbor's property in the middle of the night and opened up the gates because Gregson, the trooper, the New York State trooper, who is the part-time or also cattle rancher, who says that these cows were his, and who went over there to get them back. And then when she didn't return them, saying, hey, I'll pay you top dollar. And then he brought in basically the troopers. He's a New York State trooper. And then the New York State troopers came in. But one of the reporters said, well, how do you think, these cows got out? Because he said, well, no, everything was locked up. But I mean, that's, according to Tracy, she said that's absolutely absurd that somehow Tracy Murphy would go over there in the dead of night and unhook some fences and walk out with these two cows and walk a good part of a mile or more than a half a mile to take them to her sanctuary. What's your reaction to that, Jenny McQueen?
Well, that's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, Tracy has enough animals to look after. Her time is taken up looking after her beautiful animals herself. The fact that, they think that she would go and do this in the dead of night, it's just totally ridiculous.
The other conspiracy theory I've heard is that somebody wanted to provoke, I'm not saying Gregson, but somebody wanted to provoke this kind of conflict and went in there, some anonymous third party, and let them out, knowing that they would probably walk across the field in the hopes of sparking something like this. Nobody knows.
Well, Tracy was getting some hate prior to this event, so it's possible. It yes. Certainly is possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery surrounding this. Ultimately, I'm curious what everybody thinks. Is this good for the animal rights movement? Or is it bad? I think anytime you raise an issue to the surface, ultimately it's a good thing because it's bringing these submerged conflicts to the light, and dialectics, argument and counter argument to reach a higher understanding of a given subject matter is what ultimately helps people progress. Jenny, you wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, I agree to some extent that it's a good thing for animal rights to get these issues to the surface. But for Tracy personally, she's possibly facing jail time, and she runs a sanctuary. She doesn't deserve this treatment at all.
Yes, and I want to go back to Joe, talking a little bit about how her sanctuary has been impacted. I mean, she's gagged. That's why the protesters are silent, and essentially, she's saying, and I've seen various reports about this, and she's urging everybody. She isn't. Her supporters are. Let me make that clear. She's gagged, but to urge to visit ashesfarmsanctuary.org and donate because she's having trouble feeding her animals because she's been basically it's very hard for her to get hay. It's hard for her to get she's surrounded by people who are have protested against her, and so she says she's living in a hostile environment. What are your thoughts on that, Joseph?
Absolutely, Jane. So there is some stark contrast between the operations of Asha's as a sanctuary and her surrounding agricultural neighborhood. So due to that contrast, like you said, she's having trouble getting her standard help, people that would normally be transporting animals for her, transporting food and essential supplies. That's all been severely restricted due to that social impact of the massive influence campaign against Tracy. At this time, Friends of Tracy Murphy have created a GoFundMe to support and help save that vital sanctuary that's protecting the lives of these animals. So that's a GoFundMe again. And I absolutely encourage everyone, just personally as a friend of Tracy, to visit that, share it, and if you can, make a contribution.
And as a friend, how is she holding up emotionally? We can't talk to her. This is the weird thing. You'd think, well, she'd be at her protest. She can't be at her protest. She's gagged. We can't talk to her. So how is she holding up emotionally, Joe?
Jane, so she absolutely wishes she could be here, and today her heart is full knowing that so many people are showing up in support of the right to rescue and the context of this case with Tracy. Tracy faces stress every single day due to the situation, but she is holding strong, and although she had no idea, like I said, she'd be at the center of this case, she is going to continue to work every day to fight for the lives of those animals in her care and in general, the animals that otherwise are killed at a fraction of their life.
Yeah, and I want to go back out to, if you could, Gabby, show a little bit of the protest as it's going on, and then we'll come back to Jenny. I just want to see a little bit of the folks, get close to the other side, and let's see if you could walk down that whole area and give us a sense of what's going on. There's a picture of, there you go, and just walk down and show us there. Ellen Dent, you've been at the center of a lot of controversies in the sense that you have run Animal Alliance Network and dealt with slaughterhouses, talked to slaughterhouse owners, etc. What's the emotional toll of something like this for somebody involved in a case like this where they were arrested?
I can't imagine being arrested just because you're showing compassion to other individuals who are these cows. So I can imagine. I have not been through this. So I honestly could not tell you what she's going through or what she has been through to try to save these cows' lives. I mean, I completely admire her. She's so courageous, and they can gag her, but they can't gag her supporters that are standing out there for her, and they can't gag us, all of us.
Yeah, I want to show some of the signs of the counter protest this past summer. Utter fool. We won. That presumably refers to the fact that she was arrested, booked, and charged with grand larceny, which has since been reduced to petty larceny, but she still could do up to a year in jail. Here's another one, free the cows. Now, to me, this is the ultimate irony, because freeing the cows means basically killing the cows, ultimately, because the rancher himself has said that the cows are raised to be butchered. So that sign kind of sums up the entire dilemma here. And again, we are live, Unchained TV, live outside the district attorney's office in upstate New York, where there was supposed to be a hearing in that community to proceed with the trial of Tracy Murphy. And it it was postponed. So instead, her supporters are holding this demonstration, and Unchained TV is the only news outlet covering this live. There is one other camera from one of the local news stations covering it. I would think that all the local news stations should be covering this. This was a lead story for a lot of these news organizations up there because this is such a controversy. This is near Niagara Falls, by the way, if you're wondering exactly where. So not that far from the Canadian border, way upstate New York, and a very agricultural area. I am Tracy Murphy. Forced silence. People with gags on their faces to symbolize the fact that she is gagged and cannot speak. They are at the district attorney's office, but the district attorney has not come out, and there's very little traffic, which is why it is very, very important that we are live right now showing what is really happening, which is I just have to say, we are animal rights media. Unchained TV is the only vegan animal rights streaming network in the world. And I urge you to support it by downloading it on your phone for free, Unchained TV, or downloading it on your television via your Amazon Fire Stick, your Roku device, and your Apple TV device, soon to be on all Samsung televisions in the world. So we are growing rapidly, bringing you the news that mainstream television isn't bringing you. You know, I have to say, Renee, it just blows my mind that that there is no reporter for the New York Times. This is happening in New York State, and it is such a fundamental issue, the idea of the rights of 80 billion animals being killed for food every year.
Oh, it just breaks my heart. Yesterday, Tommy and I were on our way home from Dallas, and I see this all the time. A trailer full of cows going to either a slaughterhouse or being picked up from a sale barn. And I literally can hardly stand it. The fact that we used to do that, we used to load cows up and send them to sale and thought we were feeding the world and all of that. And when I see it now, I actually took a video of it yesterday, and it'll be on my Instagram, because every time I see this, I have to bear witness in person. I'm the only one. I had to tell Tommy, run up there, get close. He said, Renee, don't you shoot the finger. I said, I'm not. I'm just going to video, I promise. And so I video because, you know, the fact that Asha's being gagged and cattle ranchers are able to flaunt cattle going up a highway, terrified to their death, is such an injustice of our humanity. It's time for us to wake up. That's why I want to see more people around this. All of us as activists, if you are able to get behind this, show up with your signs for Asha's, because we have to show up in numbers. You know, the fact that these cattle ranchers have all these numbers, they have so much pull in our government. They have so much pull, you know, in our communities. That is why we must ally. We must come together and be that voice for Asha, for sure. And I really, really wanted you to know just how much I appreciate you covering this. When it first started to happen, I was like, oh my God, this is like speaking to my heart. And other cattle ranchers, there's other cattle ranchers like Howard Lyman and Harold Brown, Jennifer and Rodney Barrett, and you know, Cindy and Richard Traylor. There's other cattle ranchers now that have gone vegan, that are vegan. You know, this isn't like, like I'm the only one out here. There's a lot more. It happened to a cattle rancher in the UK. It happened to a cattle rancher in Canada. I mean, this is happening more and more. And the more opportunities that our cattle ranchers and our farmers are given to transition out of this horrible industry into something else, the better it will be for everyone. But right now, just like it's a crime to have compassion, it's like the animal ag industry gets all of the subsidies. They get all, and if you want to grow plants, you basically are out on a limb. You can't even do it. Yeah.
Jane,
hear
I
you.
believe you're muted.
Thank you. Oh, Joseph, thank you for letting me know about that. Now, I want to ask you, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, I want to talk to you. Yes. What I find striking about this, I don't see anybody coming in and out of this building. It's like they're barricaded inside. I've worked in office buildings for decades. Usually there's a little traffic. I mean, it's it's almost 11 o'clock your time. What do you make of that? Do you think they're just sort of see no evil, hear no evil? They're locked up in there, holding their ears and their eyes?
Jane, the scene out here, like you said, is very quiet, which does seem unusual for a midday week at 11 in the morning. One of the press members did go in to ask about the case, and they essentially said that it hasn't even fully been transferred to this county. So they're playing a sense of not really being aware of what exactly is happening, but I'm sure we are making a strong impression. Behind me is a group of approximately 20 protesters conducting a highly organized demonstration in support of Tracy and calling in several questions into play about the prosecution.
All right. Nathan, you're the attorney who we rely on here. What's the story here? She was supposed to have a hearing today, okay? The hearing did not occur, and so those who had planned to show up in court to support her instead decided to hold this demonstration. Is this the same county where she lives, where this incident occurred, whatever incident we want to describe it as? And why didn't, I mean, this happened in the summer. Why is this, it's a misdemeanor at this point. Why is this not moving faster?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've seen with these cases and all criminal cases, is the wheels of justice move slowly. I know there's been a lot of motions filed. I know there are pending motions right now, which it's my understanding include a recusal motion to try to get a different judge to handle the case. There is a change of venue motion that's pending. There are other evidentiary motions that are pending. So the case just wasn't trial ready today. We've seen it before, and my understanding is the case is now scheduled for June. I'm hoping that as this continues to get some attention, that the prosecutor's office will think better of this and use its discretion and not prosecute Tracy for essentially rescuing these two cows and caring for these cows.
Let me ask you this question, because we know things are political. This obviously created a lot of backlash in the community. The guy who went over to Tracy Murphy, a neighbor, and said, "Those are my cows," is a New York State trooper. When she refused to hand them over and said, "Look, there's a couple of arguments here. Correct me if I'm wrong." When the cows wandered onto her property, she immediately called the ASPCA, which is what she's supposed to do. So it wasn't like she hid them and said, "Oh, I don't know anything about cows," right? She contacted the authorities through the SPCA and let them know. So the SPCA was ultimately instrumental in letting Gregson know where the cows were. And then when Gregson went over there, my understanding is that she said, "Well, I don't have proof that you're the owner, and I can show you, the two cows right here." There's that. And so in the defense team is now saying, "Where are the cows? We want to examine them. They're evidence." Where does that stand? Because I understand that the cows are not being produced for the defense team to examine.
Yeah, I mean, these actions of Tracy are not exactly the hallmarks of a criminal, are they? I mean, show me an example of somebody who steals property and then calls the police. So, the notion that she was behaving with criminal intent, of course, is ludicrous. One thing that is also at issue here is that there's proof that animals have escaped from Gregson's property in the past. There's proof online that the defense is aware of. It's been made part of a motion to dismiss in the case. So, this suggestion that Tracy or others went to Gregson's property to release them in order to either rescue or as part of some sort of, some sort of a attention grab is completely belied by the evidence. Also, what Tracy also contacted an attorney to ask what she should do in this situation. And the attorney advised her, and again, this is part of the public record, this is in the motions. The attorney advised her that there's a law with regard to this specific type of incident where animals wander onto other people's property. And part of the advice she was given, rightfully, was that the person who seeks to claim the property, the animals, has to show proof that the animals are theirs, and also has to reimburse Tracy for any damage that was caused. And it's my understanding is that not just damage, but any expenses incurred. Tracy, of course, cared for the animals, fed the animals. I think, took care of some health issues with the animals. And Gregson refused to, number one, show any proof that the cows belonged to him. And number two, wouldn't reimburse her. So, Tracy has an outstanding defense here on several issues, in addition to obviously the overarching message, which is that there should be a right to rescue animals who are in need of rescue.
Well, it's very interesting. And by the way, we invite Mr. Gregson on anytime, or anybody from the DA's office, or anybody connected, however remotely, to this case. We would love to dialogue with you. If you take the whereas everything is political, and whereas this prosecution, according to critics, is political, then what is the impact of this protest? Because we saw the other protests that occurred against Tracy Murphy this past summer, and I'll play another one. It's just an 11-second clip of the protest, but it'll give you, again, a sense. Okay, so that was an 11-second clip of a protest that happened against Tracy Murphy, but now the DA is seeing this. So I'm wondering what the impact of seeing this other protest might be. In other words, whereas I'm not saying, I'm not in the minds of the prosecution, but if it were a political prosecution where, oh my gosh, everybody's up in arms, we better do something about this, we better prosecute this lady. Now they're like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, because look, there's another side to this. What's your thought on that, Renee King-Sonnen?
Yeah, there is definitely another side to it. I was just sitting here thinking, when this all first started, there was people wanting me to just like slam and go public and speak out on this. And quite frankly, I was a bit terrified because cattle ranchers and the animal ag as a whole can, it's scary how much power they have. And that is why, I'm here now, is because the numbers are growing around this. That's why I'm saying we need to see all of you gather around, because, the fact that I'm even here, it makes me a little nervous, that cattle ranchers watching this are going to go, hey, let's go pick on her. But, I've got to do this. I've got to be the voice of those that are screaming, crying, desperate. I can't stand that they have no voice except for us. So our voices have to get louder. We have to get prouder. We have to get bolder. We have to be able to just present ourselves in such a way where we show up as big or bigger than this industry. That's why we have to unite.
I think that you're making a very good point, is that if she's gagged and can't speak, then those who feel she was unfairly targeted for arrest, let me point out that she wasn't just arrested, she was shackled. She was shackled. Is this a public shaming? That's what I'd like to ask Joe. You're out there at the scene. On a almost psychological, emotional level, do you feel like this was a public shaming?
Jane, at the time of the arrest, of course, a few hours later, she was shackled as if she was a dangerous and violent person. The people that are opposing Tracy have absolutely called into question her character, calling her a vegan extremist, for example, all for of course, caring for the two animals that wandered onto her property. As far as the psychology behind what's going on here, although I'm not a professional, there does seem to be some cognitive dissonance to those who are saying free the animals while also calling for those cows, which could have lived their whole lives at Tracy's, to be sent to their slaughter, essentially. So what's going on here is of course striking the hearts of many people, and we're seeing a diverse range of reactions. However, of course, the people here and many people want to see the district attorney stop prosecuting Tracy, because we all know her, and she's just a person who has some compassion for animals.
Yes, I think that's a very interesting point that you made. So we are live. And we're the only news organization live. In fact, it seems like there's only one other news organization covering this at all. I applaud that news organization. I want to know, where's the New York Times? This is happening in New York State. This is a very important case from a legal standpoint. Now, people are asking questions we'd like to answer. Can Wayne represent her? Yes, Wayne Shung is representing her. That is already happening. So Wayne Shung, who was recently on trial himself, who is a co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, who is also a constitutional law professor, or who has been a constitutional law professor, he has been involved in open rescue. He's been criminally charged. Here he is rescuing some piglets from a Smithfield farm in Utah. He was put on trial there, and he was acquitted. And that was a huge breakthrough case. And then more recently, we had the case of the chickens who were rescued by Baywatch's Alexandra Paul, and she and Alicia Santorio rescued two chickens. They were put on trial and they were acquitted. And now you have this case where you have Tracy Murphy, a sanctuary owner in upstate New York, who essentially, when two cows wandered onto her property, kept them and contacted the SPCA and let them know these cows wandered on, took care of them. And then when the purported owner came over, she said, I'll pay top dollar. I don't want them slaughtered. He was a New York State trooper, and he called the New York State troopers, and they came in and they arrested her, and they mugshotted her and they shackled her, and she is now going on trial. Now, supposedly in June, she's going to go on trial. So I want to go back out to the scene. We are again live in upstate New York. Let me go back to Jenny McQueen. She's a noted activist from Toronto. This is happening in Niagara Falls, which is not that far from Toronto. What is the big picture here for the animal rights movement? I mean, when the history of the animal rights movement is written, where does this case fall?
Well, I think trials are extremely important to the movement. The media takes an interest. It galvanizes us. It brings us together. And I want to just remind people that Wayne Shung is actually speaking on Saturday. We're doing a Right to Rescue Summit in North Tonawanda. And also, if people can look up the Animal Liberation Conference, which is happening in Berkeley in California, then the trials will be explained. You can meet the defendants. You can learn about the right to rescue. And that's happening in June 9th to the 13th.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. I mean, this movement is growing by leaps and bounds. I don't know where Joseph went, but he's there on the scene. There he is. He's back. Yes. Well, every time you turn off your camera, it goes black. So, yeah, I want to answer some questions that our viewers have asked. And again, we are live there at the New York State that county's district attorney's office, and there is a silent protest going on because Jenny McQueen, who is a sanctuary owner, was arrested, mugshotted, and shackled after two cows, and I'll show you the cows. These cows wandered onto her property, and of course she didn't want to see them slaughtered. So she tried to negotiate with the purported owner, who came over after she contacted the SPCA and let them know that these cows had wandered on. So she wasn't hiding that fact. He came over, he wanted the cows back. She was trying to negotiate with him, saying, I'll pay you, basically, I'll pay you whatever. I want to keep the cows. I don't want them slaughtered. And he wanted the cows back. He's a New York State trooper, or was at the time. And the New York State troopers came in, arrested her, and there she is before the arrest. And then here she is upon the arrest, obviously, clearly distraught and upset. That happened this past summer, is my understanding. And now the case is moving forward, but it keeps getting postponed. There's so many aspects to this. One of the aspects, and I like you to address this, Nathan, is that it's not easy to necessarily identify cows. I'm not saying they're not all unique individuals; they are, but a lot of them are brown cows. And what are the details on that aspect? Because there's a defense that, hey, we haven't been given the cows to inspect. I don't even know if these cows are still alive. Do you? Can you bring us up to date on those issues?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that last question as to whether the cows are still alive or not. But, there are discovery laws in New York, like there are in every state and in the, the federal court system. And if this case involved the theft of, what we think of as property, whether it was a shirt or a car, the defense would have the opportunity to inspect the property every time. So somehow, because they are animals, the defense isn't being given the opportunity to examine the quote unquote stolen property. It's, I don't really understand it. I think it's a discovery violation that has potential legal consequences to the case. Again, I hope it's not something that, gets overturned on appeal, because that would mean there would be a conviction in the first place. But, the defense is entitled. Let me step back for 1 second. We've seen in a lot of these cases, Jane, where value is an issue and the condition of the cows is relevant. My understanding is that some care had to be provided to the cows. Well, if these cows were sick, then there's an issue here as to whether the cows actually had market value, which is, an element of the crime, value. So the defense should be entitled to look at the property, and that hasn't been afforded to them.
And there's all these questions about ear tags. I don't know. I wasn't there, whether the cows had ear tags or not. What's the story on that?
I can't really speak to that. I don't know. I don't know that necessarily would go to any element of the crime. Again, you're talking about animals that wandered onto Tracy's property. She did what she's legally obligated to do, which is notify the SPCA. She followed the lien law, which allows her to make sure that the alleged property owner is the rightful owner, and she's allowed to be reimbursed for any costs. None of those, she did her part. The Gregson didn't do his, and here we are with an arrest and a prosecution that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it doesn't really follow the law.
Yeah. And again, I invite Mr. Gregson on, or any member of his defense team on, at any time. We would love to dialogue. And, once again, we're out there. If I could ask Joe, can you show us the protest? Can you just take your camera and show us the protest while we're talking? Because these folks have been standing out there for the better part of an hour now. And yes, give us the entire protest from one end to the other. You see here all these folks who have gathered, and essentially what this shows, Ellen Dent, is that while, let's say, the prosecution, the district attorney might have thought everybody in this community is against Tracy Murphy. Everybody, we got to do something. This is a farming community. You also see that there are a lot of individual citizens who are in favor of Tracy Murphy, who are saying, I am Tracy Murphy, who are talking about the right to rescue, who are saying this is forced silence because she is gagged. Do you think sometimes the powers that be underestimate how much people love animals and how much people are actually evolving on this issue?
Absolutely. I don't think they're up to speed with, us and these people that are standing out there. And I think this is just such a wonderful showing of support for Tracy. And, I know she appreciates it. I would, if I was there, I wish I could just march right into that DA's office silently or not with a spokesperson and be like, hey, we're here. We're here for Tracy. We want to make sure that that we're here and that we're not going to go away. And, all of us here on this live, everybody who's tuning in, we're here for Tracy. We're showing her our support. And I hope that other news outlets do pick this up. I hope that Channel 4 airs this, that's on the scene. And I hope that, the New York Times will catch a hold of this either from Unchained TV or from the Channel 4 news piece and get it out there. We need to get this out there. We need to get this message clearly across to as many people as we can, and that's through mainstream media.
Yeah. What's interesting is that we found out covering another case that there were members of the government who were watching our coverage. So because there were things that were said just on our live coverage that ended up being discussed. So there's a value to being live and being out here. And yes, would it be great that we have millions and millions of views? Of course. And we very may well down the road. But the point is that it's very important to document and show live. I go back to that old saw. If a tree falls and no one hears it, does it make a sound? So we are filling that gap because the mainstream media, which definitely covered the protests against Tracy, don't seem to be showing up in large numbers to cover this protest for Tracy. And that is a problem. The news media, let's face it, look at the commercials. Fast food, pharmaceuticals. Okay. So they have a vested interest in supporting the animal agriculture industry. I was in mainstream media for many years. I can testify to that fact. So nobody has to knock on your door and say, hey, watch out. You just look at the commercials. You figure it out. If you've got half a brain that, oh, who's paying the bills? Who's keeping the lights on? I'm happy to say that despite all that, while I was on national television, I was still able to do an animal segment once a week, and by hook or by crook, as they say. But the point is that we are bringing this protest to you live. This is happening live in upstate New York near Niagara Falls, which of course is where people go to celebrate their honeymoon. But now this is a community divided over two cows that wandered on from a cattle ranch to a sanctuary. One of the things that nobody's discussing are the cows themselves. Maybe the cows knew something. You deal with cows all the time, Renee, and people would say that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous that the cows could figure out that there's a sanctuary on the other side. You're actually featured in a new documentary about this. You were in the process of writing a book about this. Tell us about the intelligence of cows and what they might have been thinking during all of this.
Yeah. Well, I tell people all the time, that I'm a member of the herd, that these cows are my family. I just got a tattoo here of that's Houdini. I consider her my granddaughter. People could think that's crazy all day long. But I can tell you, until you're on the other side and you actually spend time with these sentient beings, they are like spiritual giants. I can hug one of my cows, and every bit of my heart, depression, everything just leaves. They are able to just take all of the pressure off of my heart. Cows I would rather spend time with them than I would people, unless they're animal rights activists. I love going out there with them and just following them around. And when they lay down, I lay down. When they sit down, I sit down. I love being able to be one with them without selling them. Oh my God. I used to kill animals and eat them. The fact that our sentience has been so destroyed by this concept is crazy. And consider Cedar for a moment. Cedar the goat. That all that coverage just got on CNN. It starts in the schools. These animal
and let me jump in and explain. You're talking about a little girl who was involved in 4-H, I believe, and she was raising the goat. She fell in love with the goat. She didn't want the goat killed. They came and they took the goat and they killed the goat. And now she's suing. She's suing.
They spent all this money, all these resources, all this time, all this money to what? Go get a little girl's goat that she knew in her heart was sentient. You ask me how I feel about a cow. I mean, God, if we would not strip these children of their innate compassion in these school systems, we wouldn't have animal agriculture. Our kids are being farmed. Our kids are being farmed in schools to become farmers, to lose their sentience. That's the reason there's so much, pressure on these cases right now, is because the gig is up. It's just a matter of time. And, people don't go down without a fight. And unfortunately we're in the fight, and I am on the other side, and I'm here to do whatever I can to raise awareness. So thank you.
And we are live. There's a protest going on live in the Niagara Falls area of upstate New York. And, it's interesting because the last two cases of this nature, this is the sanctuary owner, Tracy Murphy, who was arrested, shackled, and is being criminally charged after these two cows wandered onto her property, and she took care of them, informed the SPCA, and then when the alleged owner, this is going to be resolved at trial, came over, a neighbor, and said, give me my cows back. She tried to buy them at the highest price because they're destined to be slaughtered. That's not me saying it. He said it. Said these are cows that are going to be butchered. The community rose up in anger against Tracy. There were protests against her, and now there's a protest in favor of Tracy. So if you had to boil it all down, the essential conflict is, are these mere property, or did this woman have a right to keep beings who would like to live, and she knew that ultimately they were destined for slaughter and didn't want to see them slaughtered. She became attached to them, and she is a sanctuary owner. I mean, they could have wandered anywhere, but they wandered onto a sanctuary. I want to get everybody's thoughts on this. Ellen, what are your thoughts on the big picture here? I mean, you've got the law. Okay, now we're seeing the ceiling. We don't want to see this. We don't want to see the sky. We want to see the protesters. Thank you so very much. Yeah, keep it lower. We're seeing more of the building. Thank you so much. These guys are doing a great job out there, volunteers bringing us this protest. And what's really interesting is this is at the district attorney's office. Not a soul, aside from the protesters. I have not seen one passerby the entire time. It's like people have locked themselves up in the building. I mean, obviously, this is an office building. It's a midweek, midday. It'd be interesting to find out. It's 8 here, 8:13, 9, 10, 11, 11, 11, approximately 11:15 there. Eventually, people are going to come out for lunch. You got to wonder, where are the people? Are they locking themselves inside, essentially? And I would like to know, is the district attorney watching this? And if the district attorney is watching this, or his people, I would say you are invited on to Unchained TV, our global streaming network for animal rights and the vegan movement. Just like all the other networks out there, we have a point of view, just like MSNBC and Fox News have their own respective point of views. And we bring stories that are being ignored by mainstream media, like this one. I believe this is a huge story, and every news media outlet in the country should be there covering it, particularly the New York Times, since this is happening in New York State. And one of the interesting things, and I want to go back to Nathan on this, is that, the last trial that occurred was here in California. This is happening in New York. And we like to think of New York and California as these sort of liberal bastions or progressive bastions where, everybody's plant-based. And no, you get outside of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City, and you're dealing with very large agricultural communities. California, for example, is the largest dairy state in the nation, Nathan.
That's right. But what we've seen in each of the cases is that despite the venue, jurors have sent the message that, well, we're not for animal abuse. And what we're seeing here is animal abuse. And we're not going to convict somebody for rescuing an animal who was mistreated. And I think that
I have to jump in. I just want to say there's no allegation that, aside from the fact that he would ultimately butcher the animals, meaning kill them, that they weren't being abused prior to. I just want to make that clear for legal reasons. There's no allegation that he was abusing them, before they walked off the property. But we don't know anything about that. That's not. But go ahead, continue on.
Right, but I think there's a sensitivity to seeing a person act with compassion and do things for ethical reasons. And I think when you raised the point, Jane, and I think it's tied together here. In the prior cases, on the right to rescue cases, we've sort of had to rely on the observations of the rescuers, right? Alexandra and Alicia observed the chickens in terrible shape. You had Paul and Wayne observe the piglets in horrible condition. In this situation, it's actually a little bit different. In some ways, you have the animals sort of speaking for themselves. And I think this is sort of where you were going with that, because these two cows, like other animals who have escaped from Mr. Gregson's property, are essentially saying they don't want to be there. And I think animals have a sixth sense for their destiny, for knowing that they're going to be slaughtered, for seeing their friends no longer there with them. So I think this is a situation where you actually have the animals saying, I want to be rescued. I don't want to be there. And how do you return an animal who wants to be rescued?
It's a difficult situation for somebody who is, I'm sorry. I got to just close that for a second. Technical issues. It's a difficult situation because she is a sanctuary owner. Okay. They didn't wander onto just anybody's property. They wandered onto a farm sanctuary whose entire mission is to save animals from slaughter. That is the purpose of an animal sanctuary. So it's very, very much a good point that you're making, is that one thing that nobody's discussing, but we are, is we're discussing the fact that maybe these animals are smarter than we think they are. And maybe they knew that their ultimate destiny in point A was to be butchered, and they headed out and they went across to point B. Now, that's not necessarily such a crazy idea. We have every day, you read in the news, a dog who wandered 700 miles to be reunited with their owners, dogs who take the bus to go to see their owners. We have stories like that, Lassie type stories all the time. And we're capable of perceiving that possibility with dogs because we spend time around dogs. But people who spend time around cows might understand their intelligence in a different way than the general public. And thank you, decidedly, Donna, for sharing out. Everybody, please share this out so that we can get more people watching this. Ellen.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. It's incredible, that this is happening, that they are having this protest out there. I just want to point out the young person on the crutches that's been staying there the whole hour. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. I also want to point out in the news story that you showed at the beginning, I believe that's Mr. Gregson, talks about how he bonds with these animals, like how they come up to him, how like he gives them like snuggies or like snuggles or something. So a lot of people that even work as farmers, that work in slaughterhouses, have told me that they walk up to them like giant cow puppies, quote unquote. So there's not this difference between them and somebody's companion animals, like their cat or their dog. And that's what we want people to see, that there's not a difference here. They are just as sentient. They are just as intelligent. They could probably tell that this was a good place for them to wander over to, where there were a bunch of happy cows living out the rest of their lives.
The drama down on the farm.
These posted signs dot several neighborhoods in Newfane, calling for the return of cows that are now living here at Asha's Farm Sanctuary, where protesters are also calling for their return to their original owner.
People are protesting against Asha's Farm Sanctuary, and they're trying to say that we are, cow rustlers. And that means stealing cows, and that is not true. They wandered on to my property.
Tracy Murphy is the president of Asha's Farm Sanctuary. She's been running this safe haven for farm animals for a decade. She tells me these two cows, which she named Little Willow and Ishmael, showed up to her sanctuary around July 16th. She says she called SPCA the same day she found them wandering around.
The alleged owner called me about a week later after the report with the SPCA, and I talked with the owner.
That owner is Scott Gregson. He owns a beef cattle farm not too far from the sanctuary. He tells me he went to feed his cattle one day when he noticed they were gone.
We looked for them, and we were advised on the following Friday by an SPCA investigator that they were located in an animal sanctuary. I do know where they're at, but I can't comment on the case any further.
Gregson has been raising beef cattle for almost a decade.
I think you're muted, Jane.
There you have, in case you're just joining us, the essential conflict. That was a pretty fair report. I want to give kudos to that reporter who pretty much stated both sides of the case, because some of these reports that I've seen have been very slanted against Tracy. Let's go out to Joe Allman, who is out there at the scene. Joe, what is the very, very latest? And you can unmute.
Absolutely, Jane. So we're live outside of the Niagara County Courthouse, which is the newly appointed venue for the prosecution against Tracy Murphy. At this time, there's a trickle of individuals, law enforcement, people just conducting their daily business as necessary at court. But at this time, no comments, no representatives or people from the actual court have come out to interact with us at all. We've had one major news outlet from this local area come and conduct interviews and cover this. But at this time, the protesters are out here, very strong message that compassion's not a crime, calling into question that Tracy Murphy's been gagged, and asking how that's possible when on the other side, there's been a massive campaign of character attacks against her.
Very, very well said. And I want to point out that Tracy Murphy has been subjected to death threats, according to, people who say they've seen the threats, not the threats, and that they've actually contacted the FBI on her behalf. I was given a letter by somebody who wrote to the FBI, the letter to the FBI outlining how somebody had claimed that they were going to hang her from a tree, and that the FBI actually called him and discussed it and therefore considered it a credible threat. We don't know what happened as a result of the FBI's purported investigation, because that was this past summer, but there you have it. So I'm going to go to another angle of our live coverage to show you the protest that continues. If you see that people are gagged, no, they're not wearing masks because of the pandemic. They're wearing masks because Tracy Murphy is under a gag order, and she says that that is preventing her from raising funds that she needs to feed the animals at her sanctuary. And I can tell you that the animals are not just cows. I'm going to show you a video of just one of the many animals she takes care of at Asha's Farm Sanctuary in upstate New York. And she, her supporters are saying, look, she needs help. Go to ashasfarmsanctuary.org and donate. She obviously needs money to feed her animals. And so you can take that action. Also, connected to this video, there is a link. There is a petition that these folks, I can't talk to her. She's under a gag order, but the folks who are supporting her would urge you to sign that petition that some supporter has written up. So I want to go to Gabby Richards, who's the other person there covering this. Gabby, now that it's getting closer to lunch, what are you seeing any movement there? What's the impact of this demonstration? Obviously, you have one news outlet that is covering it, but beyond that, what's happening?
Not too much happening right out front. So like I had mentioned before, sometimes people coming to the building to do business inside of the building, they're walking in. There have been a couple like police officers who have walked out, but they haven't approached us or anything like that. But what really it seems like that maybe I don't know if there's other exits to the building, but sometimes there's the main door and then there is a kind of secondary door here. They are entering through those doors. No one's making eye contact with us, starting any type of conversations with us to see why we're here. Definitely nobody has come out of the main doors to directly start a conversation with us.
Let me ask you, because you are very much a part of this greater community. I don't know exactly how far you are away, but everybody I talk to is like 40 miles away. It's not like Manhattan where everybody's living on top of each other. But do you feel that this protest is having an impact?
Yes, I do think so. Lockport is the city that has all of our county buildings. So, of course, it's residential. People live here. But if people are coming here, they're coming here mostly to do business at the county buildings. So, these are people from every city in Niagara County. They have to come to Lockport to do certain things. So we know that we do have a cross section of everybody from every community in Niagara County coming to this building today.
But on a greater level, there are those who have claimed that this is a political prosecution, that because there were protests and the farming community, this is a very agricultural community, had risen up against Tracy Murphy for wanting to keep the cows that had wandered onto her property because she runs a sanctuary and her whole mission in life is to avoid animals being slaughtered, and had offered to give money to the cow, to the a purported owner, and then she was arrested, and that's the whole story. But that there are claims that this is a political prosecution because there was such an uproar against her. Now that there is a protest in favor of her, does that change the equation in your mind as somebody who lives and runs a business in that community?
I think it will change their mind. The judge is an appointed member. So if he feels that his constituents want this case to move forward with Tracy, there is political motivation there for him to continue to do that. But if he can see that he may lose votes or maybe even gain votes if things can get dropped for Tracy, that could push him to make different decisions.
I want to clarify something, Nathan, that I'm confused about. Okay, this happened in the summer, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Gabby, I know you've been there from the very beginning, covering the protests against Tracy and everything else. You gave us the video of those protests. But this is a protest that you're looking at live for Tracy Murphy, the sanctuary owner who was arrested. it's all happening in the same community. There hasn't been a change of venue. This case was a grand larceny case, and she could have gone to prison for 7 years. It was recently reduced to a petty larceny, but she could still go to prison for or jail for a year, up to a year, and get fined as well. So what's the holdup? I mean, having covered major cases, I've seen many times where cases that don't involve a celebrity, for example, lickety split, open and shut. You go in there, the judge bangs a gavel, and it's over. What's the holdup with this?
I don't really know, other than that there's a lot of pending motions that have not been decided. I think there's been quite a bit of time for the judge to decide the motions, and I know they've been long submitted, but they have not been decided. Those issues include, change of venue. There are various evidentiary decisions the judge is going to have to make. There are discovery issues. You spoke a little bit about the prosecution's failure to show the cows to the defense in their current condition. Hopefully they're still alive, but we don't know. So, I don't know. I mean, the wheels of justice move slowly, Jane, and this is another example of it. There's also currently there's now recently also a motion to recuse this judge from the case.
Why?
So that only adds to it. It's my understanding from looking at the filing that there is the judge reached out to Tracy years ago through a dating website, an online dating website. Yep. So it's not.
Now, I have to say, I cannot confirm that. I have absolutely no knowledge of that. That is like something absolutely that I'm just hearing for the first time, and we invite the judge on anytime to respond to that.
Right. And nor do I. I'm just looking at the public filing, the motion that was filed to recuse this judge because of, and again, this goes to an appearance of impropriety. It's not alleging that the judge can't be impartial. It's all about justice and the appearance of impartiality. And it's important for there to be no suggestion. We don't want anybody to look back at a case and say that this judge or this juror should not have been a participant or made any decisions on the case, because there is that appearance of impropriety. So the safest course of action is to have the case heard by a different judge. The safer course of action is to have the case heard in a different venue that's a lot less inflamed than this community is over this issue.
What are the chances? That's a phrase that comes to mind, but it's a small community, and we know in small communities, everybody knows each other. Let me ask you a question, Gabby. You're there in the community, and is there a chance of reconciliation? I'm not talking about the court case, but I mean, Asha Farm Sanctuary is there. This woman who's been arrested and shackled and still faces up to a year in jail. I mean, she's living in that community. We've all had disputes with our neighbors. Oh, turn down that music and what about, we've all done that. I've had complaints against me. I've complained, but you find a resolution to live together. Do you think it's possible?
It's hard for sanctuaries, right? Because they really have to be in a farming community to have the right type of space and permits and allotment to have the animals. But how people feel about animal agriculture runs really deep inside them, and it is hard to change minds and even come to a middle ground. I do think Asha's Farm Sanctuary and Tracy are there to stay in Newfane, so hopefully with time the neighbors will get used to the idea and they will all be able to work together.
We can always hope. And, sometimes there are situations that you think are intractable, and it's really about understanding the other side's thought process. And this is truly an existential conflict, in the sense that you've got two world views. One is that these cows are not property and they have a right to live, and they left a ranch where by the owner's own comments to the news media, they were ultimately going to be butchered. And they went to a sanctuary, which is built on the premise that these animals are individuals, beings who have a right to their own lives, and you can't just butcher them because you can make money or that's your legal right. That's their moral position. Okay. And that is basically, in microcosm, a summary of the dilemma we face as a global society. This is basically, in microcosm, the debate that the world is having. This is the debate that the entire world is having, Ellen Dent. Unmute. All right, we'll come back to you, but just, oh, there you go. Go ahead, Ellen.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go.
Okay, I was just saying that people care about other animals, and and I think that really showed in Pico Rivera when the 41 cows got loose in the city. We held a cow vigil there for those 41 cows, and people were so concerned. Like, the general public came out. I mean, they even advertised our vigil on the news, on the radio, and people came, and people wanted those cows to live. They saw these cows, face to face, running down the street, terrified, literally running for their lives from the slaughterhouse. And people wanted them to win. People wanted them to make it to a sanctuary like Asha's sanctuary. So the public cares. And I think that's really important to see when people make that connection, when they want to see these cows win. They want to see them live. And that's just not going to be the case if they are returned. And I want to also point out that this farmer did name these cows, maybe not the most creative names, but Blackie and Horny. So he does, I guess, recognize them as individuals, even though he's commodifying their body. So it's very conflicting. I feel like, there's an opportunity there, even with a farmer, for him to make that connection. Like, why are you naming them if they're just, quote unquote, livestock to you? If they're just, these creatures that you're planning to kill. He even admits that he bonds with these animals while he's raising them. So I think that's really important for people to see that there is an opportunity here for not only the public to connect, but maybe even these farmers in this town to connect with their own, their own animals that they have in their care.
I think that's interesting. You were shaking your head. Yes. Gabby.
Yes, it is hard. I do believe that when the farmers have the animals on their farm, they feel like they love them, right? And then, but how much do you really love them if you put them on a truck and send them off to slaughter? And that's the problem that we have when we have conversations sometimes with farmers is they say, I do love my animals. I love them. I take care of them every day. I make sure that they're fed. I do pet them. You know what I mean? I do give them hugs. Okay. But at the end of the day, you put them on a truck and you send them to slaughter. So it's hard for me to hear you say you love them when that's not how you treat an animal that you love.
I wanted to go back to, Jenny McQueen, who was there, who's a noted animal rights activist, and maybe get some thoughts from her on the big picture here. And Jenny, we're basically trying to understand the big picture with this. This is in microcosm what the world is debating right now. We're in a climate crisis. We are getting more and more information about the huge carbon price tag of beef. It's been discussed by the United Nations, and there's a rising growth of plant-based alternatives. In fact, I just interviewed somebody who makes a vegan steak, and here it is just yesterday. And basically it looks a lot like actual beef from a cow and tastes a lot like it, but it's made from plants. So it seems like the whole world is having this debate right now. Are cows, and these two cows are sort of the poster children for this entire debate, Are they mere property that if they took it upon themselves to get the heck out of a cattle ranch and go to a farm sanctuary, do they just automatically get returned, or do they have a right to try to guide their own destiny?
You know, animals are sentient beings. They feel pain just like us. And we have to ask the question, why are we still eating animals when plants are shown to have all the protein? You know, I think our hope now is that, you know, all these food companies are coming up with technology to replace animals in food, and even some of the big, you know, quote, meat companies, Maple Leaf Foods, are producing vegan bacon and vegan ham. So I think the future is plant-based. And I think, you know, I really wish that the cattle farmers would actually clue into this. And I think that's why it's so important to have, you know, programs like Transformation by Mercy for Animals. And also, you know, obviously, Rowdy Girl, thank you for, you know, the programs that you're putting together for cattle ranchers.
Absolutely. I think that this is, you know, when you talk about history, one of the things that you learn is that people don't know historic moments at the moment they're happening quite often. It's only looking back in history that we say this was a crucial moment in history. And I personally, this is my opinion, think this is a crucial moment in history. And that is why we here at Unchained TV are live. We are covering this live. We are the only news organization covering this live because you are looking at history. It is very hard to see social progress, cultural progress in real time. But our entire model world is a blink of an eye in the span of geologic time, and things are changing. And so what you're seeing right now is a moment in history. And it's essentially human beings standing up and saying, no, these are not just property like cars or cans. These are individuals, and these two animals left a cattle ranch where they were going to ultimately be butchered, according to the ranch owner, and they went to a sanctuary. And this is the woman who took them in and was taking care of them. And then she was arrested and she was shackled and she was charged. And now she's going to trial. And there was supposed to be a hearing today. It got canceled. And instead, there is a protest in her favor. And so this might be a big shock to the to the district attorney's office, who may have assumed that, oh, everybody in this community hates her because there's been protests against her. Well, guess what? Not everybody in this community hates her. Look at all the people who are supporting her and saying compassion is not a crime, and that this prosecution is politically motivated and is unfair because she didn't just take the cows and keep them secretly. She immediately called the SPCA and informed the SPCA, which is protocol, that these animals were there. And then when the purported owner came over and said, I want my cattle back, she tried to buy the cattle at whatever price. So my question is, why didn't he, if he's ultimately going to butcher the animals, why didn't he just accept the price? Now, he has no legal obligation, I want to say, and we invite him on any time. We have to point out he has no legal obligation to accept the price. But why do you think, Jenny McQueen, he didn't just accept it, since ultimately he would be selling them to be butchered?
Well, he claims that the animals were his children's, but, you know, we think that he sold them. We think that they may have been slaughtered already. So what does that tell you? I think it's all ego-driven. He didn't want to be, you know, embarrassed to have his cows, you know, lost. And it's really sad. Tracy just wanted to give them refuge. It's extremely sad. You know, we're outraged by his actions. We really are.
I want to ask, there's one other news organization there on the scene, and having been a news reporter myself, I'm curious to see if there's a reporter with that camera person, because if there's just a camera, We'll see what the news story is. I'm kind of shocked that there aren't three. Every local station usually has at least three. Every local market has at least three local stations. ABC, NBC, and CBS is the old triad, but there are others as well. I just think it's fascinating that, well, it's not fascinating. It's not shocking me at all that we've only got one camera there, because it was big news. You just Google Asha's Farm Sanctuary, Tracy Murphy arrest, and you'll see many, many articles when the entire community was attacked, when it seemed like the entire community was attacking her. But now we only see one camera there. Joe, why don't you tell us about that?
Absolutely, Jane. So there was one camera person here for the local TV. We are expecting this to be a part of Wake Up, which is one of the networks here in Niagara County. However, they have concluded their coverage and left for the next story. So at this time, Jane, Unchained is the only media outlet covering what's happening right now.
Yeah,
in
we're
Niagara
Unchained
County.
TV now. We have changed our name to Unchained TV.
I apologize.
Yeah,
Unchained
no worries,
TV.
no worries. And we're rebranding as Unchained TV. So there's no media coverage right now.
That's right, Jane. There is no media coverage. Of course, we did have some filming from local media, but right now
You
it's
said
just
it was one camera.
That's right. It was a one person, one camera crew.
Did he interview or she interview anybody?
That she did. I'm sorry, he did. So he interviewed me. I spoke briefly. It happened to be simultaneous with the beginning of this coverage, and there was a small interview, and they were very open and asking open-ended questions regarding the case.
Well, that's the camera person.
The camera person, yes.
The fact that they didn't send a reporter, well, we'll see. But I give them kudos for at least showing up. Every single station should have showed up, as well as, what about the local paper? There's local papers that have done stories on this. This is why we have Unchained TV, because it's very important to have a documentation. And we've seen in prior experience that the prosecutors and others involved in these cases look at our coverage. We've known that for a fact because they've been quoted. Things that have been said on these live videos have been quoted in court in past cases. So, if you're just joining us, this is a moment in history. Okay, a woman was arrested who owns a sanctuary for taking in 2 cows. And there she is. There is her mugshot. And right now there is a protest in her favor. There have been protests against her in the past, but now here near Niagara Falls in upstate New York, a very agricultural community, there is this protest, and it's called Compassion is Not a Crime. She did not want to give the cows back, but she tried to buy them. And she did call the SPCA and let them know that the cows had wandered onto her property. So if you have to summarize the case for people just joining us, Nathan, give us the basics: who, what, when, where, why, how. Unmute.
I just want to warn you, there's some construction suddenly going on right outside. So if you hear it, just cut me off.
We hardly hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, I mean, this is a situation where you had a woman who has an animal sanctuary who was going about her day when 2 cows suddenly appeared at her property. And she did what she was obligated to do, as you said. She reported it to the SPCA. She cared for them. She fed them. And, suddenly it turns out that the owner of the 2 cows is a law enforcement officer. And rather than try to settle this in a civil fashion, like any property dispute would ever be handled, they arrested her. They arrested her because she showed compassion. They arrested her because she didn't just bow to Mr. Gregson. She relied on the counsel she was given. She was told that that Mr. Gregson has to show proof of ownership. He didn't. She was told that Mr. Gregson has to reimburse her for the costs. He didn't. And you've mentioned that this is a perhaps a political prosecution, and the DA is feeling the pressure of a farming community. But I would also suggest that I think this is a DA who's also feeling the pressure of a farmer, well, quote unquote farmer, who is a law enforcement officer. I think that if this person were not, there's no way a case like this would ever be prosecuted. Tracy didn't act like somebody who steals property in its classic sense. She notified the police. People who steal things don't notify the police. She engaged in a dialogue. Getting arrested was the last thing she thought would ever happen to her. It's the last thing that should have happened to her. The prosecution has discretion, like they do in all of these cases, and they have the opportunity to right a wrong, and they haven't done it. And they've continued this just absolutely ludicrous prosecution. And fortunately, there are people who are standing outside the DA's office right now who are doing what Tracy can't do, which is, assert their First Amendment rights and either speak or assemble and stand for the right to rescue.
And we are live outside the district attorney's office. You are seeing a live protest happening right now. Incredible work by two volunteer journalists, Gabby Richard and Joseph Allman, who are bringing us a video from different perspective. There's the wide shot, and then we have a tighter shot of what's happening. And we are approaching lunch hour. We have not seen a lot of people from the DA's office coming in and out. We are told that there is another exit and entrance. They may have been told to use that one instead. But we are live to bring you what is happening. We've seen one news crew. Given the amount of publicity that the other side, those who were angry at Tracy Murphy, the sanctuary owner, got, it's really notable that only one news crew was here videotaping and then left. Frankly, I think this is a story that needs to be on the front page of the New York Times, because it is essentially the battle between those who say these animals are individuals. They are not mere property. Essentially, you could make a good argument they escaped from a cattle ranch and they took refuge at a sanctuary. And who are we to say that they didn't know that they were ultimately going to be butchered? As somebody said, they see others in their area disappearing, and maybe they have the intelligence or intuition to say, I'm going to go over there, and it looks pretty good on that other side. And so they went over there, and Asha took care of them, and she tried to buy them at the highest price, higher than whatever he might get for them being butchered. And he declined, and then she was arrested and basically shackled and mugshotted, and she's going to trial. It's no longer a felony case. It's a misdemeanor petty larceny, but she still could do up to a year in jail. So today there was supposed to be a hearing. It was postponed. Apparently her case is not going to go to trial until June. And what I think is really fascinating is that it's possible that the district attorney is like, oh, well, there's another, I didn't anticipate this. Oh, maybe I have to rethink this prosecution, because one of the things we're seeing is that the average citizen, when these kinds of cases come before them, have shown a pattern of acquittal. There have been two cases that Unchained TV has covered recently that I will show you. And one of them is the case of Wayne Shung, who was victorious along with Paul Picklesheimer. They did an open rescue of two sick piglets from a factory farm in Utah. They were put on trial. They could have gone to prison for a long time, and they were acquitted by the jury. And then the next case after that, which just ended and was happening here in California, was the Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul, who, along with Alicia Santoro, took two sick chickens off of a truck heading into a slaughterhouse, and they were also put on trial and they were acquitted. I want to show you that rescue in action because they allowed themselves to be videotaped while they did the open rescue. So there she was. She caught on tape the actual quote unquote alleged crime in practice, in progress, and essentially the jury acquitted her. And I want to very quickly go to her testimony in court because she took the stand and testified in her own defense.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors. And we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
So there you go. Two recent cases where, contrary to what anybody may have expected initially, the people, the citizens acquitted people who were rescuing, doing open rescue of animals, pigs, chickens. Now we've got the cow case. I know you've got to go in a second, Nathan, but I want to ask you, do you see a pattern here? And could it be that the prosecutors put this woman on trial and then a jury of her peers who are not necessarily cattle ranchers are going to say, yeah, we get what she was doing?
Yeah, I mean, the common thread running through these cases, even though they each present a different fact pattern, is that, compassion shouldn't be criminalized. Tracy didn't wake up that day looking to go look for animals at a factory farm. She didn't go to a transport truck. She just went about her day, which is caring for animals at her rescue. But the situation came to her, and she did what I think any compassionate person would do, which is render care, render aid, take care of the animals. And I don't want to live in a society that criminalizes that. And I think this district attorney and all prosecutors should really think about the power that they have and how they should wield that power. Because when you try to criminalize this type of behavior, you really, you really teaching a very bad lesson to humans in terms of how we should treat one another and treat other living beings.
Thank you, Nathan. I want to thank Nathan for joining us. He's a very busy attorney in Manhattan, former assistant district attorney, and yet he was on for 2 whole hours. I know you got to go defend some other folks, but thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're going to continue our coverage as long as that protest is going. We will be live on Unchained TV. But thank you. And signing off, thank you so much, Nathan, for your hard work. And we have other trials coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a trial coming up of someone who is being prosecuted for leafleting in Utah. And it's an absolutely crazy case because he has a confrontation with a police officer caught on tape that is a mind blower, and I might play it here in a second. But let's go back out to the scene. What's going on? Joseph, bring us up to date. And unmute, please. Unmute.
Jane, so the protesters just conducted a moment of silence in a circle surrounding that sign that says compassion is not a crime. At the center of this case, I believe, and the purpose of that moment of silence is the focus of these 2 young cows who, if you accept that potentially they had left a beef farm, right? They walked away from that farm and they walked until they found a sanctuary. And so these protesters were conducting a moment of silence. They're now doing a group photo. So you can see that awesome group photo in front of the banner now happening. And it looks like it's potential that we may be wrapping up here. And again, that's what's happening here in Niagara County.
Thank you. Excellent job. And I just would like to get a tighter shot there now, now that we've talked to you. So I want to, all right, we got to keep it low, go low. We don't want to see the top of the building, and steady. There you go. There you got it. Doing an incredible job. This is the group photo that is happening right now. I want to get some final thoughts if in fact this is wrapping up. It's 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, this is exactly the time, Gabby, that people will be coming out for lunch. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, so people are trickling out slowly, but
yeah,
when you walk out the door, we're to the right, and they're pretty much all going to the left. I feel like no matter where they're parked in the parking lot, they're pretty much going left, and they'll find their car that way.
What are you saying? I don't understand.
Oh, they're purposely not.
Up. You just don't move. There you go. And yes, go ahead. Thank you.
When you walk out of the door, we are to the right, and what people are doing as they're trickling out now, they're intentionally going to the left. So we did have one person who drove by, and he did ask, what we were doing here. He seemed open to the conversation, no predisposed judgments on any of it, but that was really the only one big conversation.
Yeah, and so you're looking here at a live video of the protesters who are silent, and they're silent because Tracy Murphy, the farm sanctuary owner who was arrested after refusing to hand over these 2 cows and who was actually mugshotted and shackled, and is going to trial and could still go to trial for up to could go to jail for up to a year. She's gagged. She is not allowed to talk, according to the judge. And she's saying that that's making it very difficult for her to run her sanctuary, because if she's not allowed to use social media, how does she raise funds? And so we want to let everybody know that there is a petition that is attached to this live video that is a link that you can sign. And also you can go directly to her website, Asha's with an S, farmsanctuary.org. And we can't talk to her, but this is her website if you would want to support her. And so I want to get final thoughts from our panel if in fact this is wrapping up. If it's not wrapping up, we'll stay live. We'll stay live as long as this is going on. But can I get some final thoughts from Jenny McQueen?
Jenny.
Jenny, thank you for coming back to us. We want to get some final thoughts. I don't know. It appears like this may be wrapping up, but I don't know. What are your final thoughts on the significance of what's happening?
Tracy facing a criminal trial just for giving refuge to 2 sentient beings is absolutely madness. It's madness. And I think that will be shown in the court of law. Wayne Chung is representing Tracy, which is fantastic. And Wayne will be explaining the criminal trials that he's been facing on this weekend, on the 15th. There's a summit, a Right to Rescue summit. And then I'd also suggest as well, if people can take a look at the Animal Liberation Conference that Direct Action Everywhere is putting on from June 9 to June 13. And learn about the right to rescue, learn about how compassion is not a crime.
Thank you so much, and very much appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Wow, what Absolutely. An extraordinary day. Thank you
for being here with us.
That's our mission at Unchained TV, is to bring the stories that are not adequately covered or covered at all on mainstream media. We are getting the word out, going around the mainstream media blackout. So please download Unchained TV. You can download it for free right now on your phone. Just go to your app store and literally put in Unchained TV, one word. You can download it for free, more than 1,000 videos. This one is live right now, and also thousands of other documentaries, cooking shows, talk shows, etc. And we also want to get the final thought of Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network. You are an amazing activist. You've held so many vigils and protests and dealt with this issue in so many different ways. What are your final thoughts about the significance of this?
I think it's extremely significant. This is another case that goes towards getting rights for other animals that they so direly need and deserve. There should be a right to rescue. These cows needed to be rescued, and they rescued themselves by running to a sanctuary. And that's the whole definition of a sanctuary. It's a safe place. They got to a safe place away from any harm that was intended for them, to experience. So I think it's incredibly significant. We are looking at history. All of these activists that stood out there are part of history. Everybody who's a part of this live, everybody who's watching, everybody who's sharing is helping make that shift that we so direly need for other animals so that they can have the right to be where they want to be as individuals, not as property, not as objects. They need this. They need us. They need us to advocate for them. And that is exactly what Tracy is doing. That is exactly what Joe and Gabby are doing out there covering this. So thank you both so much. It's just absolutely wonderful to see this showing of support for Tracy, for Asha's Farm Sanctuary. I can't wait to see what happens in June. I hope that they move this case personally, just because I feel like this community is very harsh. It's very, farm driven. I'm just not sure that she's going to get a fair shake here or a fair trial. So, I hope they move it somewhere where there's people that are able to make the connection like they have in California and in Utah with the other cases that we've seen with direct action everywhere. And they get a jury that realizes that she's doing the right thing. Yes.
And thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us. I know you're also very busy and have a young child. I appreciate it. Final thought from Joe Allman.
Absolutely. So animals they do not want to die, Jane, and the actions of Tracy to nurture and shelter two cows that wandered onto her property named Ishmael and Little Willow are commendable. It's not something that we should be punishing or showing to the people, or the people of the state of New York should be condemning as a crime. That is something that is making the world a better place. I appreciate everyone who came out today. And for you, Jane, Ellen, Nathan, Gabby, everyone who was a part of this. And I just hope that people continue to support Tracy. I know that the attorneys, Wayne Shung and the team with the legal defense do have a blog called The Simple Heart. And one of them mentioned to me during this that you can go to thesimpleheart.com/join to get updates, as well, of course, as the beautiful coverage by Unchained TV. So thank you again. I hope that those watching this from wherever you are, please support the right to rescue and care for animals in your state, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Joe. Great job. And I'm just letting you both know that I'll probably call on you to be the reporters if this does go to trial. So you got a great training there. I want to give the final thought to Gabby. If you could unmute yourself and give us your final thought, and then we'll be signing off.
Yes, keep it brief. We're grateful for the coverage. We support Tracy. We are here for her, and we will be happy to return and give updates as things move forward.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Ellen. You guys are all my heroes. That was a lot of hard work. We appreciate it. And again, we urge everybody, share this out. That's super important. And also download Unchained TV, the free streaming network, the world's only streaming television network that is 100% vegan for animal rights. And you can get it for free. It's a nonprofit. We do not want to make money. We just want to get the word out to people who need to hear this, because the mainstream media, which is supported by advertisers, largely fast food and pharmaceuticals, do not tell this story. They have a financial incentive to support animal agriculture. So that's why we do what we're doing. It's very easy to download. You can do it right now on your phone through the App Store. I urge you to do that. That helps. It helps animals. And you can also download it on your TV via your Amazon Fire Stick, or if you have a Roku device, or if you have an Apple TV device. And we're soon to be on all Samsung televisions. So onward. See you next time here on Unchained TV. Thank you for joining us.